Today we are talking about Horus. I really enjoyed Horus as a recent release. In fact, I enjoyed most of the recent releases, but I think Horus really hits that sweet spot in terms of how he feels to play and how his kit is designed. But I want to look at this kit from a balance perspective now that we had some time to see how he actually performs in matches. And in order to do that, we will look at his individual abilities and then how his kit plays together. Let's begin with his passive. His passive is Resolute. Each time Horus is damaged by an enemy guard, he gains a stack, and when he's attacked by Set, he even gains 2 stacks. The stacks increase his protections by 1.5 per stack, both kinds, and they also increase his CCR, his crowd control reduction, by 1.5% per stack. That means up to 15 protections each, which is very good, and up to 15% crowd control reduction, which is not terrible either. It's a nice bonus, even though it's something that you don't necessarily always notice. Additionally, you also get the healing when the passive runs out. So after 3 seconds, if you haven't been hit by any other guard, the passive will run out, and you'll be healed by 2 plus 0.75 per level per stack. That means at level 1, if you had maximum stacks, you would be healed for 27.5 HP, but level 20 with maximum stacks, you'd be healed for 170. Nothing super crazy, but at least a little bit beneficial here and there, and can also be utilized for item effects that proc healing. The impact of the passive can greatly vary. In a situation where you get hit by a dot guard and can then get away afterwards, you can get a decent amount of heal very quickly after the fight. In a situation where an enemy starts with their CC in the engage, the CCR won't do much for you because you don't have the stacks yet, and the main damage may have gone through before you even get a fair bit of protection from it as well. Overall, I would still say it's a balanced passive, it's a useful passive, and it kind of works like Sobek passive in a way, but a little bit better at the same time, but not crazy better either. His first ability is another story. It's Updraft. Now, Updraft has 2 components. The first one is a very close range knock-up. You really have to be super close to the enemy to knock them up. This part deals 230 base damage plus 60% scaling. But that's just the setup part of this ability. Afterwards, he gets an extended range basic attack that passes through enemies and can therefore be used as clear as well. This deals a little bit of extra damage, between 14 to 50, and then your normal basic attack damage. But if you hit this on a target that is knocked up, which is very easy because you have your one, or the part 1 of the one that knocks them up already, then the damage of the gust is amplified to 1.5 times the damage. That means if you hit them on a wave, usually you won't get the proc for the full wave, as most of the time some minions will be too far away for that. This line basic attack lasts for quite a while after using the ability, so you have a little bit of time to use it, and it also slows the target by 25% for 2.5 seconds. The cooldown here scales down from 18 to 14 seconds, overall making it your primary ability to level first as a clear. I think the damage numbers here are already somewhat scary. The 230 base damage plus 60% scaling is something that's very reasonable on a support style warrior, and that is what Horus is. But the amplified basic attack afterwards can be very, very scary in many situations. I would not underestimate that damage because that amplifier has no conditions and just chews through anything, and we'll see with the second ability why that has even more of an impact. So I think this part is something that could have a look at already, especially since the multiplier also multiplies again with others, like for example Hydra's Lament. Now, not that you would actually build that on Horus all too often in support, but if you were to go for a Burst Horus, it would amp a basic attack that previously was at 95 base damage up to 214 base damage. So just to put that in perspective. As much as it's hilarious to slap enemies with this and utilize other interactions this ability has, I don't really think it should work to that extent, especially when you are playing in a situation where you're not a damaging character. Even as a solo laner, which some people think that Horus isn't, but some people think he is, this isn't bad at all. It's not the best clear out there, but if the enemy runs too close to clear themselves, this can still put some damage on them. His second ability is Fracture, a dash forward, relatively short, that when connecting with the guard will stun the guard and will allow for a further cleave swing afterwards. This ability apparently seems to stun minions as well at the moment, by the way, even though it doesn't say so in the description. And if the cleave after the stun connects, which it will almost automatically if the target's stunned, then this cleave will do additional damage and it will reduce the enemy's protections. The dash damage is 70 to 170 plus 30% scaling, and the cleave damage is 60 to 190 plus 50% scaling. So a total of 80% scaling still, with a base damage value of 360. The protection reduction of this ability is probably what's the most insane part. It is 10 to 30. Now, of course, there are other guards that can reach more protection reduction in certain circumstances, especially Cerberus is one of those guards in Guan Yu. But those guards are also designed to be more aggressive overall, even though Guan Yu has a little bit of a support aspect to him as well. It's kind of questionable to me that Horus gets it the way he gets it too. Because for Horus, this protection shred is incredibly easy to confirm. He just dashes into the enemy and the moment he hits that, the shred is basically applied. All of it. And 30 protection reduction is kind of equal to 2 or more penetration items or a fully stacked stone cutting sword, which normally would take you 3 hits to stack. It's more than a void shield. And just mentioning these examples should make it clear that this is something that will hurt squishies even in later stages of the game. Now, this is typically not the ability that you level too early, but if you do, you can be super hyper aggressive with it. And the mana cost isn't high either. With 55 to 75 you can use that decently often. The cooldown is a little bit higher with 16 seconds, but still not too long. And this chains together super well with the 1. You apply the 2 with the stun, the protection reduction afterwards, and then you go directly into the knockup, and you get the 1.5 bonus damage while the protection reduction is still applied, as it lasts for 3 seconds. That hurts, and I've experienced this firsthand. It hurts a lot even if you're in late game. And that brings us to the third ability, which is Protector's Surge. This ability is a quick dash to an ally, either a guard or minions, which will give them a protection buff of 10 to 30, again a relatively high value here, while also healing everyone in that area in a small AoE for 50 to 250 plus 10% of your physical power. Mana cost here is 65 and the cooldown is 16 seconds. Now, I think the protection buff aspect and the healing aspect is strong, but the protection buff only lasts for 3 seconds, so it's not super overwhelming. What is overwhelming, on the other hand, is how quick this ability is. It's supposed to be counterable by a Willish ultimate that currently doesn't work, but Ponpon has confirmed to me that it's supposed to work, so we'll see that at a later point. But even when that works, this is fast. You have to react super quickly. And it seems like there's very little counterplay that's open for this ability at all. If you're fighting a Horus, he will use his 2-1 combo and then you're either dead because he has set up for his teammates or he has enough burst himself, or he can simply dash away with a 3 with Protector's Surge, either to minions or to an ally. And most of the time there is not much of a way to prevent that unless you have excessive lockdown on him, and even then you'd have to sacrifice your lockdown on a tank. That makes him very frustrating to deal with in teamfights because you don't want to focus him, you don't really want to target him. He will bully your squishies more than a tank should in most situations, but at the same time he will also be able to go to safety at any point and often help his allies multiple times because you can't really focus him, you get some CDR, and he can use Protector's Surge more than once. And with how quick it is, you can save so many people throughout a single team fight. Especially if your team coordinates a little bit and groups up when you call, then you can even heal more than one ally. And I think this ability would have been totally fine if it wasn't an AoE heal but just healed Horus and the target that he hits. I'm also still not convinced that this is necessary on minions because in a wave this can build extreme pressure against enemies. His ultimate allows him to send a ghost form of himself into the sky while he can still be damaged and then land in another place and bring allies that were standing in the circle on him with them. The interesting points here are that this ability has a shorter channel than it seems. It's a 2-second channel, but it actually doesn't necessarily feel that long if you're tanky enough. Depending on the situation, if the carry is not around, the enemy won't necessarily be able to burst you down. And if you can make it out, or sometimes even drop in the same place, everyone who flew with you gets a shield of up to 480, starting at 160. That is massive, especially for carries and such. It gives them so much more survivability that sometimes you can literally, in a team fight, drop in place after the rest of your kit is used, like similar to an Athena ult, only that all of your allies will get a shield. It also deals up to 550 damage, plus 80% scaling, and it knocks up enemies quite heavily in the area as well. With a mana cost of 100 and 100 cooldown, it's something you can't use super often, but again, Horus benefits from CDR anyways, as his cooldowns are rather long, so why not just use that in a fight as well and then hope it's up for the next fight. I know a lot of people hesitate to use it quite often, and sometimes I couldn't find the situations to do so, but sometimes it's fine to literally just drop on the enemy team on your own and set up for your allies that way, because it's still a massive shield that you get at the start of the fight and that you can utilize in the fight if you feel like there's no other opportunity. It's still a good escape in some situations as well, given that the enemy team can't burn you quickly enough and you already have some defense. It's also still an insane objective secure, objective aggression that allows you to zone off enemies from objectives or just outright steal them from them. The footage that you're seeing in the background is very, very early gameplay with Horus. This is the first time of me playing him after PTS basically. And I hadn't had anything down. I didn't have the range of the 1 down. I didn't have the range and the delay of the 2 down. I didn't know the range of the 3, and I didn't have the feeling for the delay of the ultimate either. And still, it felt very, very easy to play Horus. And I think it's kind of dangerous to have a very strong guard that is also very easy to play. Normally an easy guard, like Neith for example, has a significant downside to them, as it is for her with her leap being very predictable and relatively slow, so that's how she gets caught out. Horus doesn't really seem to have any of that, and I think it would be warranted for him to do so. I think the points that could be tackled here are the bonus gust damage that is applied after a knockup, the protection reduction on the 2, which is very, very high, the fact that the Protector Surge at 3 is super quick, it could be slowed down, and maybe also make it single target, and the duration until the ultimate allows him to drop down somewhere else. Maybe just make it so that he has to channel it for a while before he can actually drop, because right now it is super, super safe as well, even though it's supposed to be something you shouldn't use in a fight. Now do note that while I think that Horus is very strong, a lot of people aren't really performing that well with him just yet. There are a lot of people that have issues using his combo effectively, a lot of players that don't really utilize the ult properly or have their teammates not utilize the ult, and that's why I think Horus isn't really performing nearly as good as he will in the future. Of course, enemies will learn to play against him, for example against the ultimate with the wind up, but especially the heal is something that again doesn't have that much counterplay yet. If, however, you're one of the people that is struggling a little bit with Horus, then I would highly recommend checking out Superteat's new Horus guide, where she covers how to play him, it covers all the basics for this guard, and that could definitely help you on your way. I will link it right here, so you can just click on it from here. That said, especially from a perspective of competitive play, I definitely expect Horus to get more nerfs later down the road. Until he's nerfed, I'm probably gonna have some fun with Jungle Horus in the future and go full damage and see how I can work with that, especially with Hydra's Lament. And with that, thank you very much for watching. If you're new to the channel, feel free to the sub button and maybe the bell, it really helps me out. And other than that, see you for the next one tomorrow. Duke Sloth, out.